Good evening. I would like to call the business meeting of the Portland Board of Public Education to order. It is Tuesday, May 7th, 2019. The Portland Board of Public Education is meeting in City Hall and Council Chambers. May I please ask the Superintendent to call the roll?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Mr. Atkinson?
Here.
Mr. Balfons?
Here.
Ms. Bondo? Ms. Figdor?
Here.
Ms. Davis?
Here.
Ms. Morioni?
Here.
Ms. Thompson?
Here.
Ms. Trevorrow? Mr. Inabanza?
Here.
Mr. Norris?
Here.
Ms. Power-Rakowski? Mr. Samuntu? Mr. Abdirahman? And Chair Rodriguez.
Presente. Would everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all. For the report of the chair, I just want to give the board and the members of the community an update on our budget process or development. Yesterday, the City Council held a public hearing for the school budget. I want to thank the members of the community who showed up, who testified in support of the budget, and of course, those who showed up to speak. Even if they were not in support, I think it's always important that we value the opportunity that we have in our community to express our concerns when it comes to these matters. The next step on that process, the Finance Committee for the city will have a meeting on Thursday as they continue their deliberations, and the School Finance Committee on our end, I think we're also supposed to meet on Thursday for our committee meeting. And then the next public hearing for the council's finance, or rather for the council's part of the school budget process, is scheduled for the 14th. Is that correct? For the 14th, and then they'll hold a vote at their committee level on the 15th. Perfect. And then the council once they approve the budget up to the full council, the council will be voting on it on the 20th of May. Perfect. Look at that. I got all that. I think that's all that I had that I wanted to share with the report of the chair. So next, for the report of the students, we're up for Portland High School. Mr. John Dal Norris. Take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So as we near the final month of school at Portland High School, we intend to finish strong. While our sports teams have been thwarted for the most part by some really, really nasty weather, I'm pretty sure the baseball teams had like half of the games it should have. Our scholarly events are continuing. So Portland held its annual book awards last Monday night, where staff and college representatives recognized PHS juniors for their academic and extracurricular achievements on behalf of over 30 different colleges and institutions. Also, as I'm sure you all saw in the hallway coming in, works by Portland students are being featured as part of the City Art Show, alongside those of other students in the district. Our music department is also in full swing with its spring concert coming up this Thursday. Also, slated for later this month, which I'm really excited about, we have the great privilege of being visited by the Herbie Hancock Institute for Jazz from LA and Washington, and they're going to give a presentation and a concert from guest artist Sean Jones. So I feel like we're really lucky for this event. The Herbie Hancock Institute does a really great music-based curriculum that also ties into social studies and history but teaching it through jazz and different kinds of music. We're really lucky to have this. We're only one or two, including Deering, of 10 schools nationwide to be able to host this concert/event. And that will be held on May 23rd at Portland High and then May 24th at Deering. So already looking to next year, our Portland seniors have started committing to colleges and making their post-secondary plans for next year. Now, we're really excited to host our senior scholarship night next Thursday to help with these plans. Every year, Portland High School gives away hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of scholarship money to nearly 100 of our graduating seniors. I'm really proud that we're able to use these scholarships to continue to support these students even after they graduate PHS. Also at Portland, one of our requirements for graduation is the completion of a senior capstone project, which these projects, which encompass a wide variety of subjects and formats, will be on display at the Capstone Fair on May 29th at Portland High, which I encourage everybody to attend. All these capstones are always really interesting, and they represent a lot of hard work on the behalf of our seniors. Also looking forward, our student elections for next year's student council, class officers, and my successor will be held next week. I feel like the replication of the democratic process on a school level and the involvement of our students in the school leadership process is a really great tool for understanding politics on a global and national scale, as well as an excellent opportunity for them to exercise their voice in the community, one which I am very glad to say I've had. Lastly, today is Teacher Appreciation Day, and I'd like just to give a shout out for all the teachers at Portland and in the entire district for everything you do. Thank you so much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Norris. Home stretch there towards the end of the year, so good job. I forgot to mention before we got started that Ms. Trevor and Ms. Bondo did let me know ahead of time that they wouldn't be able to make it today. Ms. Bondo is traveling, and Ms. Trevor had a conflict, an event that conflicted with tonight's meeting. So the report of the superintendent, Mr. Botana.
Yes, thank you, Chair Rodriguez. Today, May 7th, as Mr. Norris mentioned, is National Teachers Day. All throughout the month of May, Assistant Superintendent Crocker and I will be going out to schools to personally thank our teachers and staff for the great work that they do every day to make the Portland Public Schools a great place to learn. But tonight, I would also like to take this opportunity to publicly thank all of our teachers and teachers everywhere. So where Mr. Norris thanked teachers at Portland High School and Portland Public Schools, I also want to extend my thanks to teachers everywhere for the work that they do. I don't think there's anyone sitting in this room today that wouldn't be able to pinpoint that teacher somewhere in their past that enabled them to become what they have become. Teachers make a difference for students and for our community, but they don't get the recognition or the rewards that they deserve. If I could wave a magic wand and change that, I would, but since I can't, I just want to take this opportunity to acknowledge that we will not be the school system that we want to be unless we're able to attract, support, and retain the most talented and diverse cast. And that is why it is in our Portland promise, our people goal, which is the foundation on which all three of our other goals are built. Tonight, I'd like to recognize two very special teachers who exemplify the qualities that make teachers special. Presumscott Elementary School teachers Annie Dolphin and Rebecca Majorano, who recently became National Board Certified Teachers. They are now among approximately 20 teachers in the Portland Public Schools who have attained this level of certification. As part of our people goal in the Portland Promise, the district's strategic plan, we support and encourage our teachers to strive for honing their skills and sharpening their practice. One of the most rigorous and relevant ways to improve teaching practice is through attaining National Board Certification. NBTC is considered the gold standard in teacher certification, and research shows that students of board-certified teachers learn more than their peers without board-certified teachers, and studies have also found that the positive impact is even greater for minority and low-income students. Annie, who teaches grade 4 at Presumscott, previously taught in the New York City schools before joining Portland Public Schools about 17 years ago, where she's also taught at Longfellow and Reike Elementary School. Rebecca, who teaches 3rd grade, joined our district about 12 years ago. She previously taught at a school in Little Cranberry Island, teaching all subjects to students in pre-kindergarten to 8th grade. She also worked at Day One in South Portland and is a prevention specialist and has also been a lead preschool teacher. Presumscott principal Cynthia Loring described them in this way, quote, Rebecca Majorano and Annie Dolphin cultivate the greatness in our students and are dedicated to creating and sustaining the conditions for continuous growth for all learners, students, and adults alike. They challenge students to think critically and take active roles in their classrooms and communities. They engage students in the academic and character building they need to help them reach their potential as learners and leaders. Becoming nationally board certified teachers has helped them continue to hone their craft as educators individually and collaboratively and achieve more than they thought was possible, end quote. We're fortunate, incredibly fortunate, to have teachers like Annie and Rebecca who have demonstrated their dedication to their students and their profession by attaining the certification through a rigorous and multi-year process. So congratulations, Annie and Rebecca, and thank you for everything that you do.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I'm not a very good speaker, but thank you for giving us the opportunity to do this. We really learned a lot through it and had a chance to really think deeply about our teaching and make a lot of changes. Thank you for giving us that opportunity.
Thank you.
I would like to take a moment to introduce you to Erin Townsend. Erin will be joining the district officially in July as our Assistant Superintendent for School Management. Erin, stand up, is joining us from Great Schools Partnership, where he has served as a leadership consultant for schools in the Northeast for the past 2 years. Prior to that, Erin worked as a leadership coach in California after a career as a successful principal and district leader in the Oakland, California schools. Erin moved back to Maine 2 years ago, having been raised and attending school in Auburn before moving west. He has very big shoes to fill as Assistant Superintendent Crocker retires, but we're very fortunate to have Erin to step into this role. Erin has been actively onboarding with us while he can, as he continues to do his current job. And Erin, I'm very grateful for you joining us. I'm very grateful for you being here tonight, and just grateful for all the time and effort that you've put in already. Would you like to say anything?
I'm really excited to appreciate all the learning and the shoes to fill, and excited to join the community. I'll figure out the right protocol. No, I'm very excited to be here and join the team, the amazing work that you guys have charted and are leading already, so I'm excited to become part of the team and of this community to support the goals of the Portland Promise and continue to make progress for students in the community. So thank you.
Thank you,
Looking forward to
Aaron.
meeting everybody.
As you walked in today, I'm sure you noticed the beautiful Portland Public Schools student artwork on display throughout City Hall. The show premiered on Friday as part of the city's First Friday Art Walk and will be on exhibit through May 23rd. If you've not had a chance yet to walk through and see the works on display from all of our schools, I urge you to do so. We have incredibly gifted students, and our passionate and talented teachers have certainly helped them to reach their potential. I always enjoy coming to City Hall in May, in spite of the budget conversations, because I get to walk through the evidence of the great work that's happening in the Portland Public Schools from the minute I walk into the building. I was going to give you a little bit of a summary of the budget, but Chair Rodriguez did that for you. The one thing that I will point out is that the Board of Education's Finance Committee is also scheduled to meet this Thursday at 6 p.m. to review potential revisions to the proposed budget in response to the Finance Committee's own previous requests from staff. So we will be doing that on Thursday. And finally, I would just like to point out that today's agenda is almost entirely dedicated to buildings for our future items that are pressing and are on for action without a first read. As a result, we pushed to subsequent meetings, the second reading and votes on the resolution to consider renaming an elementary school for Gerald Talbot and our proposed staff use of social media policy. We've also postponed the report by board members on the National School Board Association Conference. So if you are here or you're tuning in at home for these items, they won't be covered today, but I guarantee you a riveting board meeting nonetheless. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Superintendent. Report of the Secretary, consideration and action to approve the minutes of the meeting of April 23rd, 2019. Is there a motion? Ms. Victor, second by Mr. Atkinson. Are there any questions on the motion? Any public comment on the motion? Seeing none, any board discussion? None. All those in favor of approving the minutes of the meeting of April 23rd, 2019, please indicate. It's unanimous with the students voting in favor. Thank you all. For the committee's consent items, will the superintendent please speak?
Under Board Policy KCD, the school board accepts by unanimous consent contributions made to the school district of durable goods of significant value and of symbolic importance. As required by policy, all of the donations are listed in the board memo by name and donation accompanying this item. Our practice is that each donor receives a written contribution acknowledgement expressing our heartfelt gratitude and for their tax purposes. So with that, I would like to thank the many contributors to the Portland Public Schools that have made donations of durable goods, substantial value, and historical or commemorative significance. We're very grateful for their support of our work, and this includes for Lincoln Middle School, which received a donation to be used toward water sampling and tank supplies from Ryan Rumsey's trout tank from the Portland Water District. Lincoln Middle School also received 7 screen printing screens, 2.5 gallons of ink, and 1 squeegee from My Custom, I always like that word, from My Custom Swag of Westbrook. And East End Elementary School received flowers for Volunteer Recognition Day from Home Depot of South Portland. Amanda Rowe Elementary School received a donation toward their playground from Shoshana Hoos of Portland, and Portland High School received a donation to be used toward the Portland High School Surf Club from Ameriprise Financial Services of Scarborough. And that's the consent items, and very grateful to all of our contributors for their support of our work.
Thank you, Superintendent. Before we move on to the rest of our agenda, like the superintendent just mentioned, most of our agenda today has to do with buildings for future items. But we do know we have a couple of members of the community who let us know they wanted to make some public comments on items that are not on the agenda. And we have some interpreters for them here today. And in an effort to not have them and the interpreters wait till the end of the evening, I'm going to open the floor up for public comments on items that are not on tonight's agenda. So if anyone would like to address the board, if they don't mind, please coming up to the podium, stating their name, address, and then you'll have 3, careful there. So you'll have 3 minutes to address the board. If there's a timer right there on the podium to give you a heads up of where you are. If we get to the 3-minute mark, I'll politely pause and just run around, look around at the table to see if you need an extra minute or 2. So if you're ready, you can go for it.
So my name is June Gagnon. I live at 81 Monroe Avenue in Westbrook, and I'm the American grandmother of an African child who lives in Portland and goes to East End Community School and is a deaf child. I'm here tonight with his dad, who's also going to speak after me, because we're concerned about the program being moved, for the deaf children being moved out of East End Community School. We understand that it will be somewhere else this fall, but that place has not been identified yet. And we were told this was because of space issues for new programs coming into East End. East End School welcomed these deaf children in their program with open arms a couple of years ago, and they've worked really, really well with the staff that serves the deaf children. I've been told that they really hope that the program would be able to stay there. The services for the kids are really very complicated. They involve a lot of different disciplines and a lot of people working together, both the special education staff and the regular education staff. The teachers there have learned how to integrate these kids into their regular classrooms. The teachers and the children have learned some of the ASL. The diversity of the population at East End and in Portland schools in general does reflect the diversity of the deaf children who are attending the program at East End. We would feel bad if we saw these kids in a primarily all-white school. I think they have enough differences to overcome right now. The needs of the kids, a lot of them are very complex. For instance, my grandson had no language in Africa. He came, when their family had to flee, they went first to Canada. He was 5, and he started learning French Sign Language. And then they had to move to Maine 2 years later, and he started learning American Sign Language. And in spite of the fact that he had no language during that critical period of birth to 3 years, and that he had to adapt to 2 different sign language systems, he's made incredible progress at East End. He's gone from really being almost unable to communicate to being able to talk about just about anything he wants. He corrects my signs. He loves it. The staff there has just been incredibly responsive to us, very, very warm. He's really had every service. He has every service that he really would need. When he first began there, he was immersed into sorry?
Do you need another minute?
Yeah, I'm almost done.
Yeah,
Thank
it flies
you.
by when you're up there.
Okay, so he was immersed into an ASL culture, which that school has, which not all schools would be able to provide. He loves the school. He has a great sense of humor. He just completely blossomed in that program. He's just changed incredibly. And I want to thank the superintendent and school board members for supporting this program so far within the Portland Public Schools. I think we've just been so pleased, and we would just hate to see it move to another school. I think it would be really hard. Thank you.
Thank you. You can come up.
Yeah, good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
My name is Jolie Campemana. I would like to talk in my primary language. That's where I can find some sentences. Yeah.
My name is Jolie. I would like to talk in my primary language, so I can feel free to speak what I have.
Yeah, murakoze cyane. Kuri munsi ndishimye cyane kubona nashoboye gushika ngaho nashoboye gushikiriza ku nkuru twaronse ejo itandyoheye.
Thank you for letting me be here so I can talk about news I learned yesterday.
Ejo twagize inama kuvyerekeye ishuri kuri ku mwana wiwanje uyo mu grammar aheje kuvuga kuvyerekeye programme yo kwishuri.
Yesterday we had a IP meeting for my child.
Hanyuma turi mu nama baheze badushikiriza batubwira yuko ari inkuru mbi yuko umwana Portland masezerano basanzwe bafitaniye yuko umwana datazosubira kwiga muri Portland bugabo iyo ngingo bagiye kuvyiga inyishu bazoira mu misiza.
So yesterday I learned that my child will not attend Portland Public School for next year because the program will be moved to another way.
Yeah. Lero nkuko uyu muvyeyi wanje yaje kubivuga John.
As my grandmother have already talked.
Yeah, kuvuye mwana atanguye kwegera kuri Eastern ngaha hari ibintu byinshi yunguye ko cyane.
Since my child has attended Eastern School, he has made a lot of progress.
Yeah, bijanye n'ubwenge yarungutse ubwenge bwinshi cyane hanyuma hari na programme yindi bamufitiye abandi bigisha bijanye no kugorora amaboko kugira atunganya amaboko n'amaguru mu byakora bigende bigororotse neza.
He gain in knowledge, OT, PT.
Yeah, rero ejo tugize iyo nama twaramubajije tuti none hamwe bavuze ko mu bimura bakaja kwiga handi ivyo byose afise abo bigisha b'amasari n'ivyo by'ama OT mwavuze niki azobironka hariya iyo azoba agiye uyu muvyeyi yaca atubwira ati ntabwo azobironka nk'uko ngaha yabironka.
So yesterday I asked a question: if the school, if the program is moved to another location, is my child still have the same services? And the leader of the program said, no, we are not sure if he will get all the services he had for now.
Rero ku kuntu Portland yashoboye kumushitsa kuri iryo shuri ryo ngaho kuri East End, avuye aho yahora yiga kera hirya agishika ahantu kuri Baxter.
So as my child moved from Baxter School to East End School,
yashoboye kuronka byinshi ahungukiye, na twebwe hariho byinshi byatworoheye kubera hariya ntihatubera kure mu gihe transportation cancelinze kumutwara twaca dusiba akazi jewe canke umugore wanjye.
It was easy for us to access the school because it was close to our neighborhood. So when the transportation was not given, so we were able to transport our child.
Ubu rero ntibaratubwira ati hehe azoba yarironse iryo shuri mu gihe muzoba mwafashe ingingo yo kuja kwiga ahandi. Tubona ko twebwe abavyeyi bizotuvuna, kandi n'umwana nibaza ko abonye ko ahinduye ishuri n'abagenzi yarasanzwe afise mu bana basanzwe bakomeye bameze neza baba banye ngaha.
So we were worried if the program is moved to another location, so our child is going to lose the friends he has already in the school. And for us also, it will not be easy. We'll be worried, where is our son and who is in which neighborhood he'll be.
Na cyane cyane ko yabona ko ari kumwe n'abandi bana baba banyi after school babonana canke weekend bakabonana muri park, bakasanga abona yuko bwo bumuga batamukumira, abona ko ari bisanzwe kandi byatumye nawe yunguka cyane ubumenyi.
So because after school program, he is in after school program when he just meets or connect with other students who are like him, and he feel not discriminated. So now if he goes far away, he will feel just alone or discriminated from other students.
Rero na nkuko babivuga canke nkuko abavyeyi batushikishika ngaba tubwira yuko umwana wese angana n'uwundi, naho dufise ko baba bamugaye mugabo ubwo bumuga mukaba mwadufashije bagashobora kuja mu ishuri nk'abandi bana, ibyo turabishima cyane. Twari twifuje yuko vyoguma uko nyene.
We are very thankful because when we came in this country, they told us students with disability are welcome as like other students. So we would like just if you could keep our child in the same program, in the same school.
Twagira dusabe nukuri Syria Portland Maine igume ifasha abo bana mugumana umutima wo kubakunda, kuko mu gihe baba bagenga ahandi kuri jewe no murumenga muba mubatandukanije kandi mubivuga yuko umwana angana n'uwundi.
So for me, I would like to ask City of Portland just to keep this student in the same location, because if you move them to another one, it will be like being discriminating them.
Hanyuma nkagenda nsabye yuko nongeye nshima yuko nizeye kandi ko byoba byiza mudukundiye abana bakazuguma biga hano, bajya abana bacu bakiri bato bamugaye bakaguma biga hano muri Portland, hanyuma babandanye urukundo n'ubumenyi mu bandi bana. Murakoze cyane.
So I would just say thank you for what you are doing, and thank you for keeping our student or student with disability among other students. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sean Wilkinson. I live in North Deering in Portland. And thank you, Javier, and the rest of the board for hearing us out tonight. So I'm part of a growing demographic in the deaf community, which is I am a hearing parent of a deaf child. And we have an incredible resource in, first of all, technologically, we have cochlear implants, so my son can hear me speak. But he would not be where he is today without the support of the Baxter School on Mackworth. And that program has been amazing, and we've just been sort of counting on that being a continuous sort of transition over to the East End School, where he will have not only the support of the staff who understands him day to day, speech therapists, otolaryngologist, all the things that he has, the audiology support, check in on his devices. It's a complex audiology device. But also just the proximity to a culture that he understands and a day-to-day sort of his friend groups, the kids that he's been growing up with the past few years. And I think also just thinking about the fact that there have been some serious considerations paid at that school for things that, when you do have these technological devices that allow you to hear, you need to invest in sound dampening and Bluetooth devices and FM transmitting and things. When he walks into a classroom, like the computers in his brain, which is like this sci-fi thing, just like click on and suddenly he can hear the teacher. Moving that to a different facility, I'm concerned as a citizen who pays taxes and loves this system and wants him to continue to be a Portland school student. That could be a significant investment at other locations. And if you're moving them all out to sort of spreading across the network, I don't know how many times you're going to need to dampen a room, invest in Bluetooth, invest in FM technology, Roger technology, Phonak, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So thank you for the time. We appreciate you hearing us out. And yeah, we're excited we're really excited about the prospect of moving to the East End School and the network that we have there and the network we've had through Baxter and MECDHH. And we think that we're available for the rest of this conversation. So thanks.
Thank you.
Good evening. First of all, I want to thank you for allowing us to speak with you this evening. It means a lot to us. I'm a deaf mother of a deaf child who's sitting right here in the room this evening. She goes to East End School. And we have been so incredibly fortunate that her local South Portland school allowed her to come to this program. So very fortunate. We only wish her only wish was she could be in a school that people could sign and speak. That was her only wish for her schooling. And now, she also has a community where there are other hearing students who are also learning how to sign with her. If this school moves to another location, we lose all of that. In a sense, you're robbing the deaf children of their inner peace, the way that they can be a child and socialize with other students and get the advocacy and the programs they need all the time. As a mom, I'm really upset, I have to tell you. My own community, my deaf community, who has been Portland School District's biggest supporter, we're shocked. It makes us feel like we're at the bottom of the pecking order here within the school system, and the lowest priority. You have no idea. You are the most diverse community within the state. I grew up in Western Maine. I was the only deaf child in my school. The only one. I do not want that for my daughter. I don't want that for the child of the family that spoke, or for this man's son over here. I don't want that for them. What we want more than anything, what are an enormous desire, is for every deaf child to come to this school so that they can have equal access and they can experience the diversity of this city and this school system and be accepted for who they are. The priority is education, and you have the best curriculum here in this school district. If we take the elementary school and move it to another location, we lose the fluidity of our curriculum that runs from preschool all the way through the high school. We have been working on this for years, and we'll now have those gaps if we take this elementary school out of the system and move it somewhere else. Your curriculum works with our deaf students. It works. I implore you to consider this decision carefully. Have more meetings with your local deaf community. Meet with us, talk with us, learn more about who we are. include us in this conversation. There's a saying, nothing for us without us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good evening to the board. Thank you for your time. I am a professional and a deaf, hard of hearing adult that works in the elementary school currently with the first grade.
Do you mind giving us your name and your address,
Yes,
please?
I'm sorry, I
Thank you.
apologize. My name is Megan Garrity, and like I said, I work at our elementary school with MECDHH. Our classroom exemplifies the unique diversity that takes place in our room. When entering our room, you see our mainstream teacher who has embraced our community with such grace. 2 ASL interpreters that provide access to our students. 3 ed techs, including myself, that serve our students. There are 6 students in this one classroom that are deaf and hard of hearing. 3 who are of ELL background, 3 other students that travel more than a half hour to receive the services we provide. All of these students benefit from accessing the mainstream environment alongside their very own deaf and hard of hearing peers. In addition to that diversity, you see the rest of our class with many languages: Portuguese, French, Arabic, Somalian, and English spoken users. How beautiful is that classroom? I grew up in a mainstream environment myself without having any deaf or hard of hearing peers. And that impacted my identity and self-esteem. Imagine these students who see their peers and all their classmates far more alike than different. That is the goal, is it? Today, our students were outside playing tag in the sprinkle of rain, worried that it would rain. A typical hearing peer came up to me and asked, how can I sign, can I join without being prompted? He just obviously wanted to play tag. So I showed him. In one brief and natural moment, there is inclusion. It is that easy. East End has created an opportunity for our community to be a pillar of inclusion in this very town. Through our collaboration with MECDHH, we are able to offer these beautiful, inclusive services at no cost to Portland. We wish to continue these efforts that help build a future generation of not only deaf and hard of hearing kids, but a generation that displays and knows well, deeply well, the meaning of acceptance. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Erica Noe. I live on Mayo Street, which, if you aren't aware, is in the East End, East Bayside neighborhood. I have a daughter who has attended the bilingual preschool program at Mackworth Island and is a peer of Percy and other students, a typically developing peer. And she's an incoming kindergartner at East End and has been looking forward so much to continue signing and being a part of that beautiful inclusive picture that Megan shared with her peers that are deaf and hard of hearing. And I haven't actually broken the news to her because it's too heartbreaking for me to tell her that that may change. But also as an East Bayside resident, I want to say that our neighborhood is fully in support and has fully welcomed the deaf community that is there. I know many of my neighbors who have kids have talked about how awesome the the community is there, as far as the teachers having learned to support their students more visually, and the fact that they're typically developing kids are learning sign language, and just that part of it, we would be saddened by the loss of the deaf community there. But also, I want to say that as a Portland resident who pays taxes, I also would say that we can't afford to have this program leave Portland. Like someone else mentioned before, these professionals who are experts in a whole multitude of different professions are free of charge. And like you said, the district strategic plan is a people goal. You said that you are looking for the most talented and diverse. And I would say that this is a program that is most talented and most diverse. And to have it leave Portland would just be such a loss for the city of Portland. And also, more than that, we would then potentially have to foot the cost of all of those IEP services, like was mentioned before, in the students' individual schools, which I just feel like is not a wise investment of our resources. We already have something that's working. We already have something that's been invested in. I don't understand why we wouldn't continue this successful program that is there and choose to reinvest and have to even invest more in other programs that probably wouldn't have as ideal outcomes in other places. As was mentioned before, if students are spread out in various schools, if students return back to their home districts and aren't in Portland, I just can't imagine the cost and financially, but also so much more importantly to the students' success and to even to our teachers' success, I would say, in their careers. So thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Danielle Winship, and I'm a deaf student at East End Community School. And, oh, I forgot what I was going to say. Tell them you feel heartbroken. Bring Mama said. Go ahead, tell them how you feel. I don't like the, well, I'm just going to cry. I don't like how people are saying that the East End program for the deaf students is going to have to move to a different school, because many of our students, 17 of our students, interpreter correction, come from very far away different places. And they get the transportation to deaf services at the East End School. If this program is gone, then those students are going to have to go to their local schools. And sometimes their schools don't have a lot of deaf students in it, and they don't even have any sign language interpreters. It's not fair. And I know how it feels to be alone, to be the only deaf student in a school. It feels awful. You feel like you're the only one in the world. You feel like everyone's looking at you and you get embarrassed. Excuse me 1 minute. it's not fair how other people have connections, but the deaf students wouldn't have any connection to other people, and the deaf students should be together. If that program is gone, it's going to be, you're going to be taking away their learning and the relationships that they already have with each other and the teachers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Falbo. I don't live in Portland, but I am the Director of Mainstream and Deaf Education Programs for the Maine Education Center for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing in the Governor Baxter School. Pretty much that means I supervise the K-12 program in Portland, and thank you for allowing me to speak. I do want to say I really appreciate the relationship we have with Portland. I've only been here, well, not yet a year, but I'm finishing my 44th year in deaf education. And I very much appreciate the relationship we have, in part because of the diversity and acceptance that Portland Public Schools have offered us, specifically East End, Lyman Moore, even though we don't have any students there this year, and Portland High School. What that means for our children is they don't stick out. They don't stick out because they're deaf. They don't stick out because they sign. They don't stick out because they may use spoken language, and it might not sound like every hearing kid. They don't stick out because they may be brown, they may be black, they may be white, they may have blue hair. They don't stick out. And I'm not sure you can appreciate how rare that is for a deaf child. I believe that we enrich Portland Public Schools as well with our own diversity. If you look at the makeup of my 18 students at East End, you'll see that they look like all the other kids in Portland. We also offer American Sign Language to the schools, and there are so many kids right now signing. I've never understood why it's okay for hearing kids to sign, but not for deaf. That's gotten by me for 44 years. One of the great things about Portland, which nobody has mentioned, and this may seem trivial, but I think it's vitally important, Portland has public transportation. This year alone, I have had 3 families move from Africa. Their children have no language. They have no means of transportation, and if we move to a rural area, we will not only lose those children, you will keep them because they're Portland residents, but their parents will have no way to get out to meetings, to IEP meetings, to events that we have. And just like your special education programs in Portland, we really value our parents, and we want to partner with them in the education of their children. Did you know that hearing is not necessary for brain development? It's a misnomer that you have to be hearing and have speech to have your brain develop. Not true. Not true. What you have to have is language. And because of the fantastic programs set up we have at East End right now, our students, our deaf students, can be totally immersed in a language. And we can give them the optimal brain development. We can give them a foundation in a language that allows them to communicate, allows them to have friendships, allows them to have a social life, allows them to receive academic information, and acts as a bridge so that they can learn English as a second language.
Do you need, I'm sorry, do you need another minute?
I need one more minute.
Go ahead.
Thanks. I just encourage you to find space for us. Honestly, I have called more than 14 school districts in Cumberland County, and nobody has what you have to offer us to meet the needs of our parents and our children. A very wise woman told me this morning that if Portland Public Schools had an influx of second graders, you would find room and you would have another classroom of second graders. I implore you to consider us as a vital part of your program. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is O.J. Logue. I'm the Executive Director of the Maine Educational Center for Deaf and Hard of Hearing. Just important to give you some timelines, because we had a fruitful meeting with Jeannie Crocker and Deb Mullis about a memorandum of understanding, which has been long-standing. And we had a very positive meeting about the future of our program, including East End. And then on April 9th, we were informed that was going to change because of relocation needs, that East End was no longer on the table. So in earnest, I asked Rebecca and myself to really take charge and really try to be in compliance with what you need to do in that situation. But, we went out looking at 12 different districts. And then one of the financial realities is that we are appropriated by the state of Maine, where we receive roughly $8 million. And if you want to look at it, it's under Title 101, Chapter 304. And it's daunting, the responsibilities that we have in terms of transportation. All of those things are in there. So when we start looking at, like, mentioned the retrofitting of classrooms to be Bluetooth and all of that, I don't have the budget for that. I've just asked the state of Maine for $1.8 million biennium requests. That was not factoring in transportation, Bluetooth, any of those other things that I need. And you have an outstanding administrator in Boyd Miley. Boyd Miley is a former special education educator, loves our children, loves the kids, and gets it. I'm deaf myself. I grew up in Orono, Maine, and so I know that isolation, that feeling of isolation. And I stood back as long as I could for this past month, but it's time to really rethink this, because really to displace us, is really it's just going to undo the great work we've done here. I've only been here for 2 years. I'm so proud of the work that we've done in these 2 years since my time here, and creating a vision for the future. And I just don't see how I can create that vision for the future if we're asked to relocate. And like I said, we're 12 school districts, number of meetings with superintendents, there's simply no space. I get that you don't have no space either, but this is the future of our, like we talked about, the immigrant population coming here, they're getting amazing services. It's quite amazing when a child comes from Africa, not having a native language, and then we begin to give them native language through signing and all of that. So, I really ask that we find a way to make East End work for us. So, thank you for your time.
Thank you. If there's anyone else. If not, we'll close the public comments for tonight. Really appreciate everyone who came in tonight and spoke to the board. All right. So we don't have any board focus on education issues or old business. We're moving into new business. Excuse me. Consideration and action to authorize the issuing of an RFP for architect and engineering services for 3 remaining buildings for our future projects, not to exceed $3,483,890. Is there a motion? Ms. Davis, second by Mr. Atkinson. Are there any questions on the motion? Oh, yeah, is there any questions on the motion? Did you speak on this? Yeah. Sorry, should I ask you? Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm going to ask the superintendent to speak on the motion.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So in front of you tonight, as I mentioned in my comments, we have several items that are related to the Buildings for Our Future project. The first item on the agenda is the consideration and action to approve, authorize us to issue an RFP for architect and engineering services. This is for the remaining 3 buildings, so that is for Longfellow, Presumpscott, and Reike. And this is a not-to-exceed RFP for $3,483,890. As you know, the Buildings for Our Future program was approved by voters in 2017. 2017. There is a $64 million bond issuance for Lyseth, Longfellow, Presumpscott, and Reike. We will be dealing with several items related to Lyseth shortly. As you know, the district issued a request for proposals to procure architect and engineering services for Lyseth last spring, and in August, you authorized us entering into contract with Harriman Associates for that purpose. As we've moved forward on the Lyseth project, we've been looking at what should we be doing to continue the work, and in that process, staff determined that it's in our best interest to contract with a single architect and engineering firm to design and build the specifications for the remaining 3 schools. This is part of an effort to determine the appropriate phasing of the remaining 3 schools and potentially allow us to pursue a contract management approach to construction. This latter issue is subject to a state waiver approval, so it's independent of the decision that we're asking you to make today, which is to authorize issuing of the RFP for the architect and engineer. As you know, and is in your memo, the role of the architect and engineer in these projects is large and complex. They're required to furnish all expertise, labor, and resources to provide complete design and construction administration services that are necessary to complete the project. That includes meeting with school-based staff and designated committees responsible for the project's coordination with PPS and other city and state authorities as required for the designs, including the related site improvements, coordination with the district to provide evaluation, analysis, recommendations, cost and time estimates, reports, feasibility studies, preparation of schematics or preliminary designs, field inspections and investigations, and code compliance investigations. They are also required to coordinate the design of utility connections with local utility providers, coordinate with the district to provide cost estimating at various stages of the design, provide complete construction contract documents with professional seals and signatures in accordance with the RFQ, RFP, including but not limited to the 3 elementary school sidewalk, the 3 elementary schools, the sidewalks, streetscape, lighting, drainage, any other required public infrastructure for the project, provide assurances that the construction contract documents are in conformance with generally accepted architectural and engineering practices and comply fully with all applicable codes and regulations, and provide construction administration services, including the inspections and oversights of testing during construction of the 3 elementary schools and the related sites. Assuming approval tonight, the next step would be for staff to convene a selection committee. If you'll recall, during the previous projects, we formed a selection committee that included all of the members of the District Building Advisory Committee that were interested and volunteered to be on that committee. That were not elected officials, and the elected officials are precluded from being at that level of engagement by the city procurement ordinance, and so we would propose doing the same in this particular case, so that would include the principals of the 3 schools, as well as all of the members of the DABC that would be interested in serving on the committee. As the motion and action, consideration and action request indicates, the anticipated fiscal impact is $3.483,890, and that is based on 9% of the fees for the estimated construction costs. And so we're looking forward to discussing further, answering any questions that you may have. Staff is here. Mr. Stockmeyer, our attorney on this matter, is also here, and he can help to answer any questions that you might have on this.
Thank you, Superintendent. So now do we have any questions on the motion? Ms. Morioni?
Thank you, Chair. My question is around, well, I have 2 questions. First is clarifying, you said you have to submit a request for a waiver from the state. And I was just wondering, have we submitted that yet?
No, we have not at this time. First, we need to get the RFP going, and we have been working on crafting our request to the state, and we'll be doing that as soon as we start moving forward with the RFP. But the two are really disconnected. I just wanted to make sure that you understood that our goal is to not just do the RFP for the architect and engineer, but also to be able to pursue other management options for the contract, and so that's the related item, but that's not what you're acting on today.
Okay. Well, my follow-up to that was how likely it would be that we'd get approval on the waiver, but I guess...
I think I would turn that over to Mr. Stockmeyer, who has experience with this in other settings.
Hi.
Good evening, I'm Bill Stockmeyer. I work at Drummond Woodsum. I also live at 12 Penrith Road in Portland. The short answer is we don't know. There have been and are two relatively recent requests for the waiver of competitive bidding in individual cases under unusual circumstances. One was approximately 3 years ago, where a waiver was granted to the city of Lewiston for an addition to one of its schools. And the other one is pending now and is intended to deal with an environmental problem that arose in the middle of a construction project where there's a need to directly hire a subcontractor. I believe that one will be approved. Many years ago, we also applied for one in what seemed like very unusual circumstances that was not approved. It really depends upon the reaction of the Commissioner of Education and the Director of the Bureau of Real Estate Management, which is the former Bureau of General Services. So we can't really predict that outcome until we have some communication with them. Perhaps in your favor is that until recently there was a special pilot program allowing a committee in Augusta to grant waivers under a pilot program statute. That statute sunsetted recently, so that option is now no longer available. The only thing available is this discretionary waiver, so that will be one of the arguments that we advance.
My follow-up question was regarding the DABC and how much this was discussed at that meeting and what was the outcome of that discussion, if there was one.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I should have mentioned that this was put in front of the DABC at their most recent meeting, and they recommended to the board that you advance, that you approve this request.
Can you give a little more specifics as to why and how many of the DABC
It was a unanimous vote.
It was a unanimous vote. And
actually, I think it was it a unanimous vote, or was there an abstention?
One abstention.
One abstention.
And can you give a little bit more again on the rationale, specifically from the DABC lens? I don't know if that.
We explained the same thing that we're explaining to you today, and the DABC weighed it from their vantage point and supported that. I think that the basic idea for us is that we believe that rather than having the projects in sequential order, that it makes sense for us to be able to look at them as a package, and so that's what this allows us to do with a single architect. We'll be able to have the architect and engineers help us with the phasing, which is really important, but also be able to coordinate the projects so that they're not necessarily one running its course and then beginning another one, but actually be able to weave aspects of the project together. And Steve, do you want to come up? Because these questions are starting to get like very close to outside of my boundaries. So I just want to make sure that you can jump in if I'm...
Steve Stolfen, Facilities Director, Portland Public Schools.
Thank you.
So you don't, I don't think you have to answer at this point unless I didn't say something, because I know that Ms. Thompson has a follow-up question, so.
I think Ms. Fig,
Just stand here in case we need.
I think I had Ms. Figdor had her hand, and then Ms. Thompson.
I don't have a question, but I'd be happy to provide. I think the feeling of the district.
Do you, Ms. Figdor, I'm sorry. I think I appreciate that you're trying to bring, if you don't mind, if we wait and to get any other clarifying questions, and then when we get,
Fair enough.
I was going to actually ask for it when we got to discussion piece. So if we have any other clarifying questions, Mr. Nabanza, do you want to use the microphone here for Ms. Davis?
So, just reading this, it talks about like an estimated 9% fee based on construction costs. Like, what does that mean? And how, like, what is like the financial impact in addition? Like, what does this plan do to like to the bond and stuff, to what we're gonna do?
A very good question. In the BFOF, the 4 schools, as they were budgeted and escalated, came up with a total cost for a project or a school. Within each of the budget lines, there's soft costs for architect fees. So in this case, we took the soft costs for the architect fees and added them together for the 3 remaining schools and applied a 9% to that. So in each of the projects' school's budget, there's a contingency line built in for the bid contingency. If the bid is over, as it is in this case, we apply that money to it. So 9% of the soft cost in the total project budget, which includes construction costs and all fees and soft costs. So that's how we arrived at that number. Now, each school will have an impact from its own contingency line as we get to the phasing and the construction aspects of it. And our hopes are, in the design of 3, we can get some concurrent work going, possibly even in the course of design and phasing of construction. And construction management, which the superintendent has pointed out, is a separate entity which may allow us, if we can, produce a uniqueness to our request in the waiver, to be able to show our uniqueness and need that a certain type of project delivery method, which is low bid, always, that this process brings a contractor with us at the same time, a builder and an architect, to package and weave it together and cut back on time of the whole process, hopefully. So we're being pretty nimble here with this process and looking for ways to reduce the time. Time is money, especially in this construction environment. So I hope that answers your question. You're welcome.
Ms. Thompson.
Thank you. As co-chair of the DABC, I just wanted to add a couple things that haven't been said yet, which I think the superintendent and our facilities director did allude to, is at the DABC meeting, we did hear information from Hardy Pond about how they put the bid together and how challenging it was for them to find particular people to bid. And I think that we heard that conversation in the DABC and saw the escalation. And if you recall, when we started BFOF back in, I can't even remember, Ms. Figdor probably says it in her sleep, of when we started BFOF. The point was always that we were going to start one project and then get the other one going because of costs involved. I think that that was discussed at length, and most of the people on the DABC have been watching and hearing the conversation over the years. And so to be as frugal as possible with the funds that we have allocated from the City of Portland, from the voters, we felt that this would be the best use of the dollars to have one, potentially. So it was unanimous with, I guess, one abstention from what I recall.
Any other questions? If there's none, if there's any public comment on the motion. Councilor Costa.
Evening. Justin Costa, I'm the other co-chair of the committee when Sarah wants to let someone else run the show there. I said I'm the other co-chair when Sarah wants to let someone else run the show. No, I just want to rise to make one additional point going back to the beginning, that I think we all recognize that this is a challenging construction environment that is totally independent of this particular project, school construction, anything like that. The city is dealing with it, the sewer district is dealing with it. It's happening all over the state. It's causing MDOT to cancel projects. I think one element that I would very much urge the board to keep in mind is that part of the goal here, a major part of the goal, is simply to package this to meet the original goals of equity in design. So the more challenging a construction environment that you are operating within, the more imperative it is and the greater the advantages of trying to design multiple schools in a holistic kind of way, so that if we continue to see major cost escalations, anything like that that we need to be aware of, you're not sort of stacking that up so that it all hits in the last project and you have to deal with it in that way. In the event that things continue to trend in this direction and we have to make some difficult decisions, I think it's everyone's preference that we would like that spread out as fairly and as equitably as possible across the different projects. So I certainly think that moving in this direction, whether it's through this mechanism or through the waiver process, will have that significant advantage of allowing these projects to be more equitable in the end, which has always been the goal since 2013.
Thank you, thank you, Councilor Costa. If there's no other public comment, excuse me. Is there any board discussion on the motion? Ms. Victor, if you wanted to, I'm sorry.
Councilor, thank you. Thank you, Chair. Councilor Costa brought up the major issue, additional issue I wanted to raise around equity and ensuring as we go forward that all of these schools are, will meet the expectation of the community to the best of our ability. And we've seen construction, you know, how heated the construction market is right now and the challenges that's posed for the Lyseth project. And our ability to now move forward with the 3 additional schools at once will enable us to minimize potential inequity among the projects as we go forward, in addition to saving time and money. So I think this, you know, and this option was actually discussed initially among the committee as the perhaps best way to go, but we weren't able to undertake it with the first project with Lyseth. So I feel really good that we've gotten to this point where we're doing something that might be, you know, we're going to pursue a waiver from the state in order to get the best outcome for our community. I feel quite confident seeing how long these projects could take if we did one after another, you know, stacking them one after another, that the efficiencies that we'll see are well worth it, and it, I think, will dampen a lot of concerns in the community about schools that go later in the process potentially getting less. And so, yeah, I'm very supportive of moving forward with this RFP.
Thank you, Ms. Victor. Any other board discussion? Ms. Morioni?
I think I'm in support. I think my hesitation is around, I remember back when in 2013, when we were looking at the timeline of everything, and we definitely wanted all 4 schools to get done, but it was more of trying to figure out, or having someone who can figure out, all right, you can't work on all for at the same time, sometimes because the construction may be too loud, you might need to actually be moving kids to, or having in the summer. It would be great if they could all be, fixed in the summer, per se, but I'm just a little bit hesitant on that issue, because I remember the previous architects talking a lot about some of the features that needed to be changed could not be completed in just a summer. So I just want to put a note of caution around feeling as if it all could be done as quickly as we would like it to be. I just wanted to voice my hesitancy there. The other thing I'm a bit hesitant about is I just want to make sure that we're not going to be, again, thinking that this is a cost-saving measure when I'm sure that they are going to have cost escalators built in, and the fact of, I don't know, I just want to make sure we're not pigeonholing ourselves into something that I'm imagining what will happen is it'll constantly come back to us to review whether it's around the financial piece of everything, and having a set amount of money, regardless, spreading it out over the 4 schools. I tend to agree on the equity piece. At the very least, we can be more solid on, okay, that we can only have this much to spend on these 3 remaining schools potentially. So, like I said, I'm a little hesitant, and the other piece I'm hesitant about, honestly, is because in a fair trade market, free market, when you do these types of things and you consolidate, it can be a cost savings potentially, but it also could leave people out of the building projects that maybe want to be a part of it. So I don't know. I just needed to voice my hesitancy a bit. I don't know if that was very concise, but thank you. And thank you to the DABC for all your hard work, and to staff for bringing this forward as options, and to our lawyers for double-checking everything for us. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Morioni. Ms. Davis, and then Ms. Thompson.
To just perhaps respond a little bit, having listened to the conversation as a member of the DABC, and having done some home renovations, I think this approach is like when you have the money to do both your bathroom and your kitchen, it can be more cost savings and more efficient to have the plumbers there and they're working in one place and then they work in the other place, as opposed to waiting and having you could have a break between the two. That might be nice in some ways, but in terms of getting the work done, oftentimes in construction there are small pieces of it, and having the ability to have the plumbers at one school for a week, and then they're going off to be at the other school while the sheetrockers come in. I mean, you can move your subs and your different construction needs around and kind of bring them together and actually have a bigger, in the end, potentially a bigger, more interesting project for a potential contractor to look at, which in this heated market might be to our advantage. It's really hard to tell how the market will respond to this, but I was convinced, listening to things and thinking about it, that this actually could be more efficient. You've got folks, they're going to be working somewhere all the time. And the first step is for us to get the architects to do the architectural and engineering to sort of figure out, okay, they're going to need to be here and going to need to be there and going to need to be there, and boy, that's a great contract, because they're going to be busy all 4 months, not 1 month, 1 year, 1 month, 1 year, 1 month, 1 year. So I can understand your hesitancy. It's a much bigger project for us to undertake than doing a single school at a time. But I think it does have the potential to offer cost savings, and for us also, as we have to look, and we have had to look with the Lyseth project and say, this is how much money we've got, and this is what we can get done with that. And so we'll be looking at all 3 of those schools at the same time, rather than one at a time, where I think it could be that we essentially run out of money by the end. Because if the market stays like this, you're seeing bids come in 25, 50, sometimes 100% over. Some of the Maine Department of Transportation bids were just beyond what they could even do. It was so far off their estimates. So it'll allow us to do the decision-making on all three buildings at the same time and to schedule and stage that work the same way. We will have challenges about locating children and moving things around, but I think looking at all of it, we may be able to address that better than if we did it one at a time in standalones. So it's going to be a big undertaking, but I think the outcome will be worth it in the end.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. Ms. Thompson? Well, Ms. Thompson and then Ms. Moore.
I just want to follow up to Ms. Davis. I appreciate that, Ms. Davis. I think we're all going to keep an eye on our children and ensuring that their teaching is being done properly in all of the schools that may have construction happening. That's my only sort of red flag was going up in terms of moving our students and their teaching environment in these cases. But thank you. I know we're all keeping that in mind. I just wanted to remind everyone. Thank you.
Ms. Thompson.
I follow after Ms. Davis. That's going to be really challenging because she hit most of the things I was going to say. But I think also in regards, I'm very supportive of this. I'm not going to repeat what has already been said, but the scheduling, I have great faith in the superintendent and our staff to find the way to be the least disruptive to the students. I remember with East End Community School, and that was a different situation. It was a mold situation. The kids had to get out of there. The staff had to get out of there. But we moved them to downtown Portland here on Congress Street. And while it wasn't the best situation, they had some great, some great school for that year or two and came back to a beautiful school. So I think that they're already looking at the alternatives for where students may have to go, but working within the confines of as Ms. Davis said, with the electrician being here and doing the electricity over here and everything. And it goes back to the original, when we started BFOF, and you were here as well, is that we wanted to maximize the dollars, get them done as soon as possible. We're already that many years behind. And so to not do this, I think, you look at the BFOF from when Oak Point did it, and the escalation is only going up. And I'm not going to go into the bathroom renovation like as Ms. Davis did, but I just had one, and it's a beautiful bathroom. But it's very expensive costs right now. And listening to Hardy Pond Construction talk of how challenging environment it is right now, and they going out to try to find the electrician, for instance, they had a really hard time. And that's one area that we'll talk about later of when cost savings. I have great faith as well that the architects that we currently have, but also our staff, are always looking at maximizing the dollars we have. And so, in my opinion, I think this is the best route for us to go in order to try as much as possible to reach what we originally wanted to do back in 2013. So I would encourage my colleagues to support this very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Thompson. Any other board discussion? Seeing none, I'm not going to repeat. I think that I am going to support this motion. I agree with a lot of the comments that were made in support of it. And I also hold the same concerns for how this affects the educational experience for our students and our staff. So having said that, I'll put it up to a vote. All those in favor of authorizing the issuing of an RFP for architect and engineering services for the 3 remaining buildings for our future projects, not to exceed $3,483,890, please indicate. It is unanimous with the students voting in favor as well. Thank you. Next, consideration and action to approve entering into a contract for construction services with Hardy Pond Construction in an amount not to exceed $14,505,000. Is there a motion? Ms. Davis, second by Ms. Victor. Would the superintendent please speak to the motion?
Yes. So I'm going to let Mr. Stilfen and Mark Lee from Harriman. We have a presentation about this issue. In essence, the first action that we're asking you to take is the simpler one, because it really is authorizing us to enter into a contract with the lowest bidder. That is the way that our contracting is structured. So this first action is fairly straightforward, but I think it would be helpful for you to understand where we are after the DABC project. Okay. So let me just keep going while they figure out the technology. So this first action is pretty straightforward. It's agreeing to what our contractor presented, our potential contractor, the lowest bidder, presented as the lowest bid. But we want you to understand the second part of this, which is, as you know, the bid came in above the budgeted amount, and so as a result of the conversations with the DABC, we were given directions to do some trimming of the budget, and we wanted to, and then the DABC moved to recommend that you authorize us to enter into contract with Hardy Pond, and that they also recommended that you authorize us to increase up to a certain amount that would come from the project reserves. But they also gave us some directions around what would be some of the areas where we would be able to manage that cost. And so today we're going to talk about where we are with that, and then ask you to approve the action, which is the entering into contract with Hardy Pond, and then up to 2.1 million, but as you'll see, it's potentially less than that. So with that, I'm going to be quiet and let these guys talk.
Mark will run through his presentation on the request for the amount of money that we're asking for to pay the contractor in this project, which is at $14,505,000. That is the low bid, as competitive bid, that was opened in the City Hall here last week ago, Thursday. So we are needing to accept at that number. Mark will walk us down through the options where our reductions can come, and they can come in two places: value engineering, which is removing aspects of the original design that was bid, and bids from the subcontractors through reductions in scrubbing costs. So I'll let Mark walk that down.
Thank you very much, Steve. So good evening, everyone. My name is Mark Lee. I'm a project architect with Harriman, and I'll try to be as clear with the information. The presentation I'm going through tonight, the information is was really most contained in your packet. So I think there shouldn't be much here that looks new. But what I'll do is I'll just kind of bring you through it. You already started the conversation regarding the bid climate, and so when we opened bids on the 16th, we indeed realized just how heated the construction market is. There's been a lot of press in the news lately about it, but so this table here is the first thing that we did after receiving bids from Hardy Pond Construction. And just to kind of clearly identify what this is, there's sort of breaks down the work of renovating and adding on to Lysath into a number of different construction categories. And then it shows one column that's called the estimate, and that was what we had done leading up to the bid of the project. We had done a takeoff of all the different quantities of materials and their costs and labor, and we came up with what we expected the construction cost to be. And then the next column, it says SOV. That's actually the schedule of values. That's what the actual bid came in from the low bid contractor. And so it gives a comparison of where we thought the pricing would be in the market and where the actually pricing was in the marketplace. And so the next column is delta. That's the difference between those two. And then it shows the percent differences between those two as well. So when we reviewed this, the things that really stuck out were the two last subcategories or bids that are actually from subcontractors, the electrical and the site. And you'll see that both of them were 83% over the estimated cost, and that resulted in about a and I'll speak in terms of order of magnitude costs, and so they're not precise, but they'll give you a sense of what we're talking about in terms of the total dollar value. And that was about a $2.2 million difference just in those two items. And so that has allowed us to start to understand what happened from the time that we estimated it to the bid. We know that they had the contractor Hardy Pond had a very difficult time finding an electrical contractor. And it came very late in the process that they actually got one, and so we think that what you realize when you don't have a lot of competition is that the pricing tends to go higher. The other one was the site cost, and there was one contractor for the site work as well, and site contractors are in particularly low supply right now too, so that was working against that as well. So that if you total the SOV column, that is where the Hardy Pond's bid comes from, and that's the $14,505,000. And what we did was we looked at, okay, if we were to build the total project budget, and probably what I'll do is I'll just skip a page and I'll come right back to this, but this is the total project budget, if you will. And this project budget is one that shows it at various points during the development of the design. So the first time we established it was back in August, before we had actually gone through a detailed design. Then we updated it in February, just before we were going out to bid, with what the construction costs were going to be. And at that time, we also included the site circulation cost for the stormwater work, which I think we've talked about before as well. The post-bid 423, that's the third column there. That's if we plugged in the $14,505,000 from Hardy Pond's bid, and so the resultant total project cost would be the $18,572,580. So that's taking the bid that we got and plugging that actual numbers in. And so the budget works that we are estimating all the time until we actually get the cost, and when we get the cost, then we plug those into this budget. So that's how we arrived at this $18,572,580. So that would be the post-bid project budget. In the project budget, we have a 10% contingency built into it, and that contingency that's designed to absorb two things. One, absorb potential changes in the pricing in the marketplace during the bid climate. And then there's a portion of that bid contingency that is used for things that come up during construction itself. And so the two different items in that are we usually use half of it for the bid contingency and half of it for the construction contingency. So the half for the bid contingency amounts to $586,640. So we would essentially use that to fund the bid itself at this time. The next thing, so that's kind of the basic of looking at the bid, and that's kind of I think the first question that you folks are dealing with. I'll move into the second piece, if that's appropriate, right now, to understand what has happened since that time with the contractor, and what we've been doing since they opened the bids. The first thing we did was we said, what can we do to reduce the cost of it by a process called value engineering, which looks at, can we reduce any of the different types of materials or different systems that we're putting into the building, and through that process, can we realize savings? And sometimes that means giving up things of value, but we evaluate what the savings would be and see if it's a reasonable value. So that process yielded a reduction of $295,000. During this time, we also looked, or the contractor was continuing to look to see if they could find more competition in the marketplace for the electrical contractor, and found an electrical contractor that was able to provide a lower price than the one bid that they had received. their price was $650,000 lower than the first contractor. And so that was a great, again, that's when competition works. When you have multiple prices, we tend to see pricing get lowered. And that's not giving up any scope. That's simply a contractor was willing, looked at the project, and understood how they could do it for for a different price. So then those are the sort of first couple pieces that we're looking to try to reduce the cost. The next thing we did was looked at the project budget itself, and were there items in the project budget in the soft cost? And by soft costs, it's all those things that aren't part of the contractor's work. And so if you, so that piece we looked at, we have a line item in there for new equipment, new technology for the learning environments and for the school itself. And we also have one for furniture. Because nearly all of the spaces, even in the post-renovated LISATH, will be essentially spaces where they currently have furniture for, we felt comfortable in reducing the total value of the furniture and movable equipment line item without jeopardizing the idea that they would be without furniture in the outcome. So that was an area that we looked at and felt comfortable with, that the spaces would still be furnished. And for instance, the nurse is going to a new location in the building, but they already have a complement of furniture where they are, so most of that would move into the new spaces as well. So with those adjustments, we would reduce the total project cost from $18.5 million to a cost of $16.7 million. Comparing that to our pre-bid project budget that was established in February, the delta goes from being, instead of $2.8 million, it goes down to about $940,000. So that's sort of the effort that has been looked at and considering options to reduce the overall project budget. So, and then if we are interested, we can go into further detail, but this starts to identify where we looked for realized savings in that value engineering process to come up with that $295,000. And so this looks at those, and again, I can answer questions if there are any particular questions on that. And as this is a fluid process and we're working daily with the contractor to try to identify savings, the last page is sort of even more detailed breakdown of where those potential value engineering savings are coming from and what has been explored and considered for realized savings through that value engineering process. And so again, those are tiny numbers on the screen, but I think they're probably more legible in the handouts. And with that, I guess I'll open it up if there are any questions. Or Chairman Rodriguez, however you want to.
Yeah, I think if anybody has any questions, Ms. Morioni.
Thank you. So I guess my question was regarding the first page with, when you have the whole list there, the second for demolition, the estimate, that's a huge delta as well, 93% change. So I wanted you to speak about that, why it was so off.
Absolutely. So sometimes what you find in this is that the contractor may break out prices differently than the estimator did. And that was the case in this instance, where the concrete demolition was actually carried in the concrete contractor's number, not in the demolition number. And so and there was a couple other categories that work that way as well. What was interesting is when we added up the costs from Division 1 through Division 23, the delta for all of those costs from the estimate was around, I think it was less than 5%. So the idea that sometimes there's values in the estimate that get sorted in a certain way, and sometimes there's values in the schedule of value from the contractors that get sorted in a different way. And so it's not always apples and apples. Does that make sense?
I didn't quite understand it. No, I think I was distracted as well. But I guess, I mean, it's not a huge, different. I mean, it's not a huge cost savings necessarily. I mean, $200,000 when you're looking at millions. But I guess So break it down again. Why would demolition all of a sudden be twice as much in layman terms?
Yep. So if you were to take that $134,000 on the next line in concrete,
Yep,
that's actually came in less than the estimate.
right.
So in the
Oh, I see. And it says concrete demolition.
in Division 2.
Oh, I see what you mean. So it's actually just moved.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Sorry about that.
That's okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Nope. No other questions? Actually, I think I had a question, and I apologize if it was part of, I was trying to look at the numbers as you were talking about where the savings came from the electrical
Sure.
work. But so there isn't a detailed breakdown of what the electrical savings are, like you have with the value engineering. So, pardon me? So I was just wondering if you can just explain that a little bit more detailed.
So the value engineering, we actually looked to substitute materials that were different from what was actually requested of the contractors. With the electrical, that savings is simply a result of asking another contractor to price the work. So they were bidding the same exact systems and materials. It's just that we asked, there's another number. So that's...
Excellent. With no change in the actual scope of the work.
No change in the actual scope.
Excellent, thank you. Any other questions? Excellent. Where are we at? Perfect. So if there's any public comment on the motion? Councilor Costa?
Since I'm here, I'll comment again. Justin Costa from the City Council and co-chair of the DABC. I would just strongly urge everyone to move ahead with this and accept this bid. I said a similar comment at our meeting the other night, and this is actually a better number due to the new bid. We're seeing this escalation all over the place, and I think the temptation is always to look at your bottom line right now and compare that to where you would like to be. And the real decision, I think, to make is to look at the real cost that you have in front of you and compare that to all the other possible outcomes. And the only alternative, really, to moving ahead with something like this right now is to effectively say that we're going to wait an entire another construction cycle, go through another season of construction cost escalation, and come back and try to rebid a very similar type project in the future. The likelihood that that will get us into a better place is exceedingly low. So I, like all of you, would love for this to be lower. I would love for this to be exactly where we want it to be. It isn't, but I am very comfortable with this, and I have no doubt that moving ahead at this time and beginning construction on this is the best choice. And then I would also be remiss if I just didn't pause and look at Lori and Sarah and Marty, and I'm sorry Anna's not here, and say this is a milestone event in this process that, I mean, we have been working on for so many years. This is a milestone for the district that spans multiple superintendents, multiple facilities directors, finance people. I could go on and on. And despite the level of detail that is in front of us and which we should all be paying attention to, let us not lose sight of that big picture. This is a milestone event moving ahead to fulfill the vision that we had many years ago to move the district towards greater equity for all of our elementary students, and really to fulfill, I think, the vision that all of us have for our school system. So this is an exciting moment for all of us. I'm glad that I have been able to be some part of it. I am glad, I think, still, that you asked me to continue to be a part of this on the DABC. Yeah, this is really just a remarkable event for us to finally be at this place. So I'm so excited for all of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Well stated. Any other public comments? Seeing none, excuse me, any board discussion? Ms. Figdor?
Sorry, I actually have a question.
All right.
Just looking at the total amount that we are approving here, the $14,505,000, that is the post-bid project budget with the additional half of the contingency built in?
Yes.
So the $14,505,000 is simply the cost that Hardy Pond submitted with their bid, and so the funding for that would come from the available resources, but that $14,505,000 is simply the contractor's bid. So, and the shift of contingency is simply on the funding side, not necessarily on the cost side of it.
Ms. Thompson?
Sorry.
Yes, a follow-up.
I'm sorry, Ms. Figdor.
Thank you, that's helpful. Does that include the revised electrical bid?
So, no, that does not. That $14,505,000 was pre any value engineering reductions or pre the electrical price reduction.
So why are we approving an amount that doesn't reflect the changes that we've made to the project going forward?
It's the design bid, build, procurement, project delivery method that requires us to take the lowest bid. The contractor will negotiate with us the value engineering and the reduction on the bid side from the sub once they have the contract. We can choose to pick the higher number and go with the other contractor.
No, we can't.
Where they were so close, but this is a position we need to take the bid they submitted along with everyone else, and they're awarding the bid and contract at that number.
So if I can state back to you in my own understanding of your explanation is that we now have to move forward to accept that bid, even though we've now done quite a lot of work, and I mean, it's been excellent work to actually reduce the project costs. And so the amount we're approving tonight doesn't include that great work to bring down the costs.
That's correct. And so you're approving a not-to-exceed amount that is based on the lowest bid. And then that amount is higher than what is budgeted. And so now, next, you're going to act on a request to fund the difference between what we have and what we foresee we will have to spend.
But the next number that we're going to consider too does not include the reductions that the staff have been able to reach. So I just want to...
And we can deal with that in the next, because if you want to amend it at that point to reflect that amount and so on. But that's why we tried to separate these, because we have to accept the lowest bid. And so that's what we're doing with this one. And now we're going to move to the other one, which right now is stated to be 2.1 million, which is what we envisioned, but we wanted to have a conversation about all of the things that have happened since this was originally put on the agenda.
Okay, terrific, thank you.
So now we just add to that, the electrical is, we're going to take that. But you'll have the opportunity to look at the value engineering, the $295,000, and look at that. We'll look at it as a staff and do you want to, when we get drill the specifics way down, do you really want this removed from the project? What is this value to you, as opposed as how we look at it in value engineering, which is really no value in it most of the times, is taking things away. So you'll have an ability to take it all, take none of it, take some of it.
Get the first one. Ms. Thompson, yeah.
I just want to add, so that, to their point, is that the amount of the contract, and the value engineering items are suggestions. They have not been agreed upon by the DABC to make a recommendation to this board. So that still conversation has to happen. And the last conversation that we did have at the DABC, there were some concerns from some of the building level advisory council members, as well as the district, of cheapening things as we go along. You know, it saves us $10,000 to maybe change the tile, and it maybe saves $15,000 to change the acoustics, but what are we really doing? And so I think that conversation has to continue at the DABC, and then for us to make a recommendation back to the board. So to cut anything at this point would be a little bit premature, but that will be, I assume, on the next agenda for the DABC to discuss, and we would bring back a recommendation to all of you for your review. Thank you.
Any other board discussion? Okay. Seeing none, we'll put it to a vote, and I think on the next item is where we're going to have more of the discussion to the comments that were just made. So all those in favor of approving entering, Ms. Davis, I'm sorry, did you have some? Jumping and thinking. All those, I'm going to rush this. All those in favor of approving entering into a contract for construction services with Hardy Pond Construction in an amount not to exceed $14,505,000, please indicate. Yeah, it's unanimous with the students voting with the majority. Thank you. All right. Next, consideration and action to authorize an increase of up to $2,122,200 for the Buildings for Our Future LICET project budget to be drawn from the $5 million Buildings for Our Future reserves. Is there a motion? Ms. Davis, second by Ms. Thompson. Well, would the superintendent please speak to the motion? Or do we have someone?
I don't think that we have anything to add, so I think it really is getting into the substantive conversation that just began now about knowing what we know about where we are with the potential for reductions. Are you comfortable? You know, we're asking you to give us authorization for up to $2.1 million in money to come from the reserves. However, as you heard, we are at a place where we know that there is going to be at least $600,000 in reductions out of the electrical contracting as part of value engineering, and the potential for another $300,000, so roughly, $900,000 less in this amount. Our proposal is to have the full authorization so that staff can work as they have been with Hardy Pond to look at what makes sense and what doesn't make sense, and not to come back, with each and every potential reduction, but to have the discretion. When the DABC approved moving forward, or, and bringing it to you, they gave us the marching orders, if you will, to see if we could get up to $750,000 in, at that time, scope reductions. And right now, we're looking at considerably less in scope reductions, and without any scope reductions are pretty close to the maximum that we felt comfortable on the scope reduction. So we think that we can, push a little bit, but without getting too far into that. And so that's why we position this as the request for the 2.1, but if you feel that you want to amend it and have a different amount in there, this is what we envisioned would happen during this time.
Thank you, Superintendent. Any questions? Ms. Victor?
I'd like to consider, at least discuss for now, the possibility of amending this to reduce that total by $1.2 million. So that would be half of the project contingency as well as the reduction in the revised electrical bid.
So can I just ask a clarifying question on that? And I'm going to look to staff. I think the project contingency is already included, so that, if you recall, the amount that we were over was closer to $2.8 million, and the contingency amount is already figured, has already been subtracted out from that, and that's how we got to the 2.1. So there is no additional contingency money to put into this. The only remaining contingency is the amount that's available for change orders and things that will invariably come up as the project moves forward.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. I would like for us to consider reducing the amount by $650,000. And I do want to remind the board that we've already approved $500,000 from the overall for school bond project contingency, the overall contingency, which is where the money would come from tonight, for the site circulation issues. If we've already been able to have this additional bidder on electrical, which is such great news, let's just take that. I don't see why the number has to be elevated. It should more accurately represent the amount we're talking about spending.
So, Ms. Victor, so if what you want is to amend the motion to is the amount minus the 650, do you want to just put it up and ask for
a second?
Oh, I'm sorry, you're right. Ms. Victor, we're still in questions. We'll wait till we get to the discussion to make a formal amendment. Thank you, Ms. Davis.
And I'd love to hear from Steve or Mark or others if there's any reason not to do this. So that's why I wanted to just pose it for discussion initially.
Excellent.
Mark or Steve, the question is there any reason not to do this?
None at all.
Any reason to only go 650 or to do also the 295 included?
I think Superintendent Bontana suggested that level of discretion may want to happen at a different level, and that comes back to maybe to this board.
Yeah. Ms. Davis?
Are you recommending that we change this? What I'm concerned about is some of the issues in value engineering were things that had, yes, we could change from the kind of flooring that was spec'd to tiles, which would be much harder to maintain. They were cheaper up front, but more expensive down the road. I don't want to hamstring us in this project, and I want to do it right. And so I guess that's my concern at this point. I'd almost rather have the room, and if we, this is an up to, so it's not marching orders to go spend it, this is giving the ability to. So are you recommending that we make this change? Because my assumption was if it was on our agenda, this is what staff is actually recommending we need.
So I think our role in this process is to offer our opinion in terms of what that value proposition is in changing those items through that reduction. And we did a process, we began that process with staff looking at if you were to change something, this is the potential of that we are giving up. And so we've begun that process, and through that vetting, and again, there was primarily their deliberation on it, our recommendation of here's what the pros and cons are, but they made a decision that we arrived safely at the 295 without, but there's still, you're giving up something. So, and that's a conversation that we can get into a long debate, and the question is it's up to I guess you folks, but.
Can I ask a clarifying question of Ms. Davis? Because I just want to make sure, is your question, are we recommending that we reduce the $650,000 for electrical, or the $650,000 for electrical you're taking for granted that because we've said we don't think that there is a a reason not to do it. There's nothing, we're really confident in that number, but, you know, we've still put this forward as a 2.1. So are you asking about the 650, or are you asking about the additional 290?
I'm assuming that the number that was put forward on tonight's was the staff's recommendation about what we should approve as an up to, given all the factors, knowing the 650 reduction and all of that, that after having looked at where we are at this moment in time, because this is a snapshot of a moment in time, we've started some of the negotiations that'll continue to happen. I mean, when you hire, the first thing is you hire your contractor, and then you sit down and you keep working to find stuff. And you do throughout a project, and you issue change orders, you find a cheaper bathtub, you find a great faucet, you get something on sale at the restore. You know, talking in sort of homeowner terms that the public and I can understand. But you still have your contingency, you still have your budget. You're always trying to come in under that, but I don't want to get in the place where you're going to come back and say, we were a little optimistic on what we thought we could fix, and now we need more. I'm assuming this is your best estimate of what we need to do the project at this moment in time. So that's my question.
We're confident that we will not exceed the 2.1 million. We do, as the gentleman explained, believe that we're going to do better than that, but that's why we put it in as a not to exceed. That is the absolute maximum that we would need. That is our recommendation. That's why we put it in front of you. You know, but again, understanding that, you know, that we were going to have this conversation and we wanted you to have the full picture. And there is, you know, we're confident that the 650 we're going to find, but beyond that, I'm not confident. And
thank you.
Ms. Thompson.
So I guess I would pose the question that it did came up at the DABC from Hardy Pond themselves, that with working all these subcontractors, that some are saying if you don't have a decision by X date, we're going to pull out. So right now, it's a little premature, potentially, to be saying, let's take out money and leave it to the up to, because it was very clear from Hardy Pond that this is a moving target all the time, and she's working with subcontractors that potentially could walk at any time. So to remove money now is too premature. I think we allow the staff to continue, as well as Harriman, to continue. And if I heard something different than that, is that pretty much what she said that evening? Okay. So she's still waiting to solidify. When we voted on her contract tonight, then they're going to go back to those contractors and try to work deals with them, and they'll continue to do that. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, the process is that by voting on their contract, should be able to say, we can have a green light to go forward.
We've got the project.
Right, okay. So she still needs to solidify at this point her contracts with her subcontractors, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Victor?
Okay, so I heard something different. I heard both Mr. Lee and Mr. Lee say that we are confident that we can lock in this reduced electrical bid. So if we do have that confidence, I don't see why I think we should approve a not to exceed that reflects what we actually think we're going to be able to get. So is there a reason?
The reason would be this, in my assessment of this. In the range, we're allowed that ability to work within the range of that total number, the 2.1. I look at the bid, the 650 is a bid process. It's in the subcontractor's hands, which the contractor that we're waiting for to sign this contract that we're going to vote on tonight, to hold his site subs, to hold his electricians, to hold the mechanicals, to hold everybody's waiting for this meeting. And it could possibly be more. It's still being developed with the subcontractors. So I know it feels kind of an odd position wise, and that's my thought on it.
Okay, in that case, I'm happy going forward with the staff recommendation. I just didn't see why the numbers didn't reflect the reductions that we were able to achieve. So yeah, I absolutely want to make sure that we have the budget to get the school done and to do it right. So thank you for that clarification.
Thank you. Any other Are we still in questions?
We're still in questions.
Any other questions? Seeing none. Any board, I'll give you guys an extra chance. Any public comment on the motion? Seeing none, any board discussion? Ms. Figdor?
I'd like to say that, I'm very excited to move forward with this project and to see it come to fruition and to know that we can break ground within weeks. It's a huge milestone. I feel good about the project plans. Even though they've been scaled back, I still think that they meet the initial goals that we set out through the Buildings for the Future project in terms of achieving equity across the district. And I just want to make sure that as we go forward with the 3 other schools, that we adhere to those goals and ensure that in the end, all 4 schools are 21st century learning environments, and that we do what's needed to deliver to the community the schools that the renovation projects and the 21st century schools that they voted for in November of 2017 and voted overwhelmingly for. So really excited about the stage about how far we've come, and to go forward with the plans for the 3 additional schools. And again, just want to ensure that we are going to see all 4 school projects through and make sure that we achieve the equity goals that we set out initially through the Buildings for the Future project. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other board discussion? Seeing none, I'll just add, I'd kind of reiterate what Ms. Victor just said, and also what Councilor Costa said. This is a critical step in the process, and as I look around the room, the people that have been involved in this work and the many years that you've all invested into this, so this should be really gratifying for us to cast this vote in a few moments. So having said that, excuse me, all those in favor of authorizing an increase of up to $2,122,200 for the Buildings for Our Future licensed project budget to be drawn from the $5 million Buildings for Our Future reserves, please indicate. It is unanimous with the students voting in favor.
Awesome.
How about that? Excellent. Next, we have a first read to approve a pathway for the expansion of pre-K programming as recommended by the Curriculum and Ed Planning Committee, and there are no comments on first reads. Next, personnel.
No, sorry, that's not it. That's what appears on our script, but this is actually a first read on the calendar for Portland Adult Ed, but somehow that's what's actually on the agenda, but that's not what is here, so this is what happens when you cut and paste, and so my apologies.
I'm going to read it over here from the...
remember this when you cut and paste in your school projects.
Excuse me. It's a first read to approve the Portland Adult Ed 2019-2020 calendar, and there are no comments on first read. Next on our personnel items, consideration and action to approve the personnel items listed, election of first continuing contract teachers. Is there a motion? Ms. Davis, second by Mr. Atkinson. Will the superintendent please speak to the motion?
I'm going to have Ms. Stoddard speak to it.
Hi there. So tonight we're bringing forward for your approval 2 groups of probationary teachers that the superintendent is nominating for renewal with Portland Schools. So the action is required by Maine Statute Title 20A, Chapter 503, Section 13201, which states that the superintendent shall nominate and the board shall approve all teacher nominations for employment. Under the same statute, the superintendent is required to notify probationary teachers of his intention to nominate or not nominate for an additional teaching contract by May 15th, which is why we're coming forward tonight. So each year we bring forward 2 groups of probationary teachers, those who have completed their 3-year period and are now being nominated for a continuing contract, and then those who are nominated for another probationary year of teaching. So you're talking about the first one right now. The first group in your packet is a list of 49 teachers who have completed their 3-year probationary period with the schools. The superintendent is nominating each person in this group for a continuing contract with the district. The second part of the vote will be a group of 101 teachers who have been employed less than 3 years, and we are nominating them, or the superintendent is nominating each person in this group for an additional probationary year with the district.
Thank you, Barbara. Are there any questions on the motion? Seeing none, there's no public comment on personnel items. Any board discussion? Ms. Morini?
I'm just super excited we have 101 in our probationary teacher. That's exciting. It's a really big number, and I look for, I'm thrilled. Yeah, so I'm happy these teachers are joining us.
Thank you, Ms. Morini. Any other board discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the personnel items, selection of first continuing contract teachers listed, please indicate. It is unanimous with the students voting in favor as well. Next, consideration and action to approve the personnel items listed. Re-election of probationary teachers. Is there a motion? Ms. Davis, second by Mr. Atkinson. The superintendent, please speak to the motion. Back to Barb.
It's the same.
Same thing?
Yeah.
Nothing to add. Yeah. Any questions on the motion? None. There's no public comment on personnel items. Any board discussion? And none. All those in favor of approving the personnel items, re-election of probationary teachers listed, please indicate. It's unanimous with the students voting in favor as well. We already did public comment for any items not on the agenda. And so we've reached the end of the evening. And it's at 9:20. Is there a motion to adjourn the business meeting? Ms. Davis, second by Mr. Atkinson. All those in favor, please indicate. It's unanimous with the students voting in favor. We have adjourned at 9:19 p.m.